So it's my pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Deborah McGuinness. Deb is the Tetherless World Senior Constellation Chair, which is the highest academic rank of a named chair that we have. And Deb is the professor in 3 different departments: professor of computer science, professor of cognitive science, and professor of industrial systems engineering. She is a leading researcher in artificial intelligence for now over 3 decades. And as we think about the impact of AI on the world, we also have to think about the impact of AI on how we educate students. Forbidding it is not, it's just not a reality that we want to embrace at RPI. We want to teach students how to use AI appropriately and then how to advance it, how to even make it better. So thinking about how we educate our students, especially with the field of AI changing at like an unprecedented rate, Deb's title is Exploring New Teaching and Research Methods in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Her talk highlights her novel approach where students learn to critically review, evaluate, and lead discussions of cutting-edge hybrid AI topics. Please join me in welcoming Deb McGuinness.
So, thanks very much. Oh, I gotta start my timer. I'm really excited to be here today talking about AI and its impact on everything. I've been in AI, yes, actually well more than 3 decades. I literally took my first AI class as an undergraduate back in the late 70s, and I've been enthralled with artificial intelligence ever since then. Getting, undergraduate, master's, and PhD, being in largely academic research, but also industrial research settings on the East Coast at Bell Labs. And actually, I worked with Lillian Schwartz. I loved that slide up there when I was at Bell Labs, and running the Knowledge Systems Lab at Stanford, and now exploring and having so much fun here. So I feel, well positioned to talk about artificial intelligence and its impact on our lives because it's literally changing everything. I've seen AI through kind of the summers and the winters and the hypes, but never really the hypes like this. So many of you might be familiar with the Gartner hype cycle. I grabbed the most recent one, which means it's already a little bit out of date because this was June of 2025. And it shows, I don't know, do we see pointers? Oh, we do, cool. We see that knowledge graphs have made it into the slope of enlightenment, which means that the world is taking notice. And which is super cool for me because I happen to be a knowledge graph expert, and which also means that we should be educating our students and ourselves about where knowledge graphs and these things that are making it through from the triggering areas to the peak of inflated expectations, through the trough of disillusionment, through where you might make a difference in the world. So knowledge graphs have made their way up. Generative AI, the large language models, have hit the peak of inflated expectations. Who doesn't know about some of the challenges with hallucinations? But also, who doesn't know how large language models might make a difference? One of the podcasts that I love listening to, Reid Hoffman, who was famous for LinkedIn, among other things, he's famous for saying, if you're not finding a way for these large language models to help you, you're not looking hard enough. But we need to teach ourselves and our students how to use them effectively, safely, and be able to articulate where it's safe to use them and where it's not safe to use them. But then there's all these triggering kinds of AI, where triggering means that you should be paying attention to it because it might make a difference and it might be enabling applications in the world to do things that they might not have been otherwise able to do. So one thing that I follow a lot is neurosymbolic. I got in AI well before it was cool, so I stand for GoFi, good old-fashioned AI. Symbolic, so encoding things like if it's raining, then it might be wet outside. But the neuro side is really taking off, how the synapses are triggering in the brain. So how do you put those two together? And that's really starting to take off, where we combine these things in ways where we can use the best of both of the worlds. And I just recently gave a talk at NESI, Neurosymbolic Machine Learning and Reasoning. And we saw not only the academics like me showing up, but we saw industry coming saying, can I do a hackathon to meet your students and see whether we can hire them? So I get the luxury every other year of teaching a topics class, a seminar where I get to talk about emerging areas. And so because I'm a knowledge graph expert, I want to be able, and because I truly believe that knowledge graphs are providing are positioned to, and currently today, providing critical additions to the evolving AI landscape, I'm doing a knowledge graph powered hybrid artificial intelligence. And I say hybrid because when I first kind of hit my stride in academics, or in academic research, I used to call myself Dr. Semantic Technologies, so encoding the meaning of terms, because everything I did was semantic. Encoding meaning in ways that computers and humans can understand it. And then when I got to Stanford, I called myself Dr. Ontology because everything I did was encoding the meaning of terms in ways that, again, those computers and humans could understand. And all my applications were ontology powered because we wanted to not just know that two things were correlated, but we wanted to know that why there might be a causal relationship between them. But really for about the last decade, maybe even almost two, I call myself Dr. Hybrid because every proposal I write, every application I deliver, pretty much every academic paper that I publish has a hybrid notion to it. So I wanted to do this class to teach the students how to use and effectively work with hybrid applications and do the research that powers it. And actually, one of the reasons that I wanted to do that was because when I go to not just the academic conferences, but the industry conferences, or the cross between academics and industry conferences, like this last time I gave a keynote at the Knowledge Graph Conference, big companies, like finance companies, like pharmaceutical companies, came up to me and said, we need to hire more people who know something about knowledge graphs and ontologies. Can you come and educate our people on how to do that? Because we're not gonna make it if we don't understand how these things are related. So, teaching this class in this emerging field means that I can't follow the normal thing that academics do when we set up our syllabus. In a 14-week class, you should be setting that up 15 weeks in advance, which means in a readings class, I've got all the readings for 15 weeks. I can't do that in a field that's changing daily. So I create a starting point, and then I've got to create an infrastructure where the students can help me keep up to date. Help them keep up to date and help me keep up to date. So I wanted to help them learn how to use the structured, rich representation of knowledge inherent in knowledge graphs, but also with that revolutionary power of large language models. But I need to help them figure out how to find the research that's important. And in the old days, I used to go to those wonderful peer-reviewed journals that would take a little while to get out, and they'd have all the credentials of the sophisticated peer review. But I do that, of course. But now I also go to blog posts and Substack and podcasts. And how do I actually navigate that world? And how, more importantly, do I help them navigate that world? So I wanted to help them be able to find the right material and then also articulate why they and I and others in the class might pay attention to it. So I need to help them figure out how to critique it. So I said, okay, we've got to create this new infrastructure. And I took a Toastmasters class a gazillion years ago. So many of you might be aware of the Toastmasters style. They try to help people learn how to articulate ideas effectively. But not only that, how to run meetings effectively and participate effectively in meetings. So we kind of borrowed that infrastructure, and there's a person who runs the meeting, and now that's a student in the class. There's people who give long presentations on the topics that we need to delve into in detail. And then we also have most of the students or all of the students giving these lightning talks, or what Toastmasters would call table topics talks, and say, I found this thing, and here's why it should be of interest to you, and here's why I'm reading it, and here's where you shouldn't use it. So here's what I've done to critically evaluate it. And they're not just doing that with your standard Google search or your favorite search engine search, but they're encouraged to, and actually we are demanding that they use AI tools. So we got an infrastructure where the students have these different roles. Somebody runs the meeting, somebody gives a long presentation, all of them give short presentations. They evaluate each other, because also in these new models of teaching, we can't just evaluate people the way we used to. So I got the luxury of having a small class, so I can do oral presentations and real-time evaluation, and I can have the students help to do that evaluation, so they can learn how to evaluate themselves and other people. So the whole class, I'm only giving 2 lectures, one giving the setup of the class and the background so that they can all be effective, and I give them a starting point and the infrastructure, but then they basically run the class. And I interrupt if I need to, but so far I haven't needed to. We're 6 weeks in, and it's been pretty amazing. And then they get to vote on what we're going to talk about. So it's a new model of teaching. It's very discussion-oriented. It's evaluation in real time. There's no way that I or they could keep up with this field. And I'm a goddess of search. And I also know this field super well, and there's no way I can keep up. And I need the world, which is the class in this case, to help figure out what we should be keeping up with. So they're actually building that resource throughout the class, sometimes with papers that literally are published on places like Archive a day before. And then we're using the class to figure out what we're going to talk about. And we're using large language models. We're helping to teach them how to use the large language models to help find the resources. And then we're helping them critically review where and when to use those resources. So it's too soon to tell how it's going, but I gave this talk, this keynote at this neurosymbolic community. I had these grad students and these young professors come up to me saying, I'm gonna use your model because this really works. And the students are having a great time. And also, I gave a keynote at the Knowledge Graph conference. They did this super cool thing. They paid an artist to sit in the audience and then in real time do this artistic rendition of my talk, saying AI is changing the world. AI is not really, it's not understanding the way we've traditionally thought computers understood or humans understood, but then is it a threat or an opportunity? How do we work with it? Well, it's really not smart if you don't collaborate with it, but how are you going to effectively collaborate? Well, you better have some good metrics. There's all sorts of opportunities for this good old-fashioned AI in combination. We need to create some sandboxes to evaluate it. And actually, with that, I'm going to leave one slide up that actually I guess I could even leave up for the interlude. But come see our table. I've got 5 unbelievably amazing graduate students, and also have a little Halloween candy. And I've got a few copies of my book for the people who who interact with us in the most engaging way, if you want to learn about ontology engineering. And actually, this is a book that I published a couple of years ago. So now there's going to be an updated book on every time I've got a new chapter, I say, should I be using a large language model to help me with this step? So let's evaluate that. So we've got all these tools and trying to help figure out how and when we use AI to better the world and how we create students who are going to be thriving in this evolving world, whether they're in industry or academics or your next round of startups. Thanks. Let's see.